Might be ready.
Okay, I was making sure it's like roll them.
We are rolling.
All right. How's it going, folks? Welcome into a Louisiana-based Inside Black and Gold edition. Steve Geller, Jeff Nowak. Good to have you back in the state, Jeff, after enduring, I guess it's been, 3-4 weeks at training camp in California.
Yeah, I don't want to make it sound like I was away at war or anything.
Oh, right, exactly.
I think we've all been complaining a bit too much about being out in California, but it did drag. The last week, I think, and I think the team itself would probably admit this too. Like once the joint practices were canceled, it sure felt like, okay, what we have come out here to do has been done, right?
Yeah.
And I think if they had it over to do again, they would have come home after Phoenix and then just done a standard road trip for the 49ers game. Because that's like mentally, I was checked out that last week. And like, I still did the work. I'm still there every day at practice, but like, it dragged and I was just like missing home real bad, you know?
No, totally
so I'm
understandable.
definitely glad to be back. I don't think the humidity is like, I think we lucked out in terms of when we got back. Because this morning walking the dog, I was like, this isn't that bad at all. What have I been telling myself?
Today's been a better day for sure. But the previous week, we were getting up to like 115 in the heat index. So it was like, oh,
yeah, we'll see tomorrow when they have that noon practice, which is supposedly outside. How I feel about it then. I might not be as chipper. But hey, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good now. I can tell you that Claire definitely missed me because she painted doors in the house while I was gone.
Wow.
Which like I walked in and was like, that's not what it used to look like. And she also, I didn't realize how many of these I actually had, but she did this, which is going to send my camera into a frenzy. She just took all the press passes I had and put them in like a thing.
Okay. Nice
So I guess I'll put that up on the back eventually. I don't know where to put it, but she had that. So she definitely had her hobbies while I was gone. I thought that was funny. Did your wife, when you were at the Green Bar, did she do anything crazy while you were gone?
It was 1 year she almost burnt down the house. So that was interesting. And we ended up having to remodel the bathroom after that. But my only montage was when I got back from the kiddo, had a bunch of like monster trucks and other stickers on a sign saying "Welcome home, Dad." So that was cool.
Yeah. I also I took a video of the dog. You want to see it?
Yeah, for sure. Miss good old Bailey.
It's terrible. I framed it terribly. I did not plan it ahead. I should have done it like horizontally. I did it, or I should have done it up and down. I did it horizontally, but here you go.
Oh, hello. Hey, baby. Hey, little baby. Hi. Hi.
Yeah, for anyone who's just listening, this dog does not normally make this sound when I get home.
Like, oh my God, you're alive.
Yeah. Well, no, I think it was like you've come back to life, because I think when you leave for more than a week, your dog immediately assumes you're dead. But yeah, so it's good. Saw my dog. Anyway, this podcast is not going to be just about the trip home. We are going to talk about the Saints, and we're going to talk primarily about Saints-49ers, because this is, probably a day late pod in terms of we typically want to do this on Monday, but Monday was a travel day and it just really didn't work out. Figured if we were going to do it, we might as well do it right and, not try to record something at 2 a.m. in a hotel room. So we're doing it this way. So we're going to get into that. We're going to do our typical like studs and duds kind of segment in this opening portion, right? Well, I want to talk about, they did lose. And typically when they lose, we'll start with the duds. We'll start with the down, what didn't go so well. And so we'll do that here. Second segment, we will do kind of 3 up, the stud segment. Then assuming, last time we did a lunch podcast, we had a good number of folks on here. So hopefully we get enough questions, comments that we can do a mailbag segment in the third, the final segment of this podcast. So if you have comments, questions, hot takes, you want to yell more about Kurt Benkert, whoever the hell that is, apparently he played in the NFL. We can do that, but make sure to drop them in there. We'll get to as many as possible. But Steve, why don't you just hit me with kind of your immediate takeaway from that game that you watched on Sunday?
Definitely good to see not having as much pressure being generated on the quarterback in the first team offense. Obviously, that first game, it was a second play of the day, and we saw Derek Carr's pass get batted up in the air, and you're just holding your breath going, no, don't get intercepted. So protection a lot better in this matchup, thankfully. Run game also a hell of a lot better. Getting to see like Jamal Williams, James Robinson, Taysom Hill was in action, so you know he's already going to churn up that yards after contact. And overall, the QB battle, too, not so settled as many have would have thought. And it was changed up, and some people question that, a.k.a. my wife. She was wondering why the heck Haener was getting those second-team reps instead of Rattler. And I'm like, well, you got to give each guy a chance like they were doing in practice. And you did see kind of both of them actually had more of a issue in this second game than the first one. Front line of the defense, though, looking mighty good. Also, linebacking crew, obviously up front, there's a few guys missing, but the depth on the linebacker unit seems to be a lot better than maybe thought of.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, you look at it and you say, hey, they didn't have either starting outside corner, Marshall Lattimore, Paulson Adebo.
Yeah.
They didn't have either what you would call starting linebackers, at least in nickel, which you're talking about Mike and Will. So you didn't have Pete Werner or Demario Davis. So like to force back-to-back 3-and-outs, or I think back-to-back 3-and-outs to start that game, you can't complain about that by any stretch. But let's talk about what didn't go so well. And yeah, you mentioned it right there. Let's just start about it. The backup quarterback competition, it was an opportunity in that game for someone to step forward and say, like, this job is mine. It should be mine. Give me my job. And the best thing I can say about it is it's going to come down to the third week. It's definitely not settled between Spencer Rattler and Jake Haener. That said, if I had to come away and say who did I think had a better game overall between those two guys, it would be Jake. I just thought Spencer, and the protection wasn't perfect, right? Like that fumble, you could say, right, hey, he had lineman driven back into his lap. Like the protection wasn't good. He had another play where the Shane Lemieux like rolled the ball to him, basically. Like he didn't get done any favors. That said, on that fumble, I think if you go back and watch it, you'll see an example of what I would be the most critical of from Spencer in his rookie season. And I think this is true for a lot of rookies, right? Especially guys who feel like they have mobility and can get out and run, is he doesn't move enough to extend plays in the pocket and instead tries to bail what I would say is just a tick too early relative to try to extend this play and create something, not just get downfield and run. You're not a big dude. You don't want to be taking hits, and I think that's just an example of like he got a little antsy in the pocket, didn't try to escape the pocket, kind of tried to run, and then it closed up on him and he had nowhere to go. And then the fumble obviously happened. And like the fumble itself, the ball security involved in the fumble is obviously a negative. But the pressure is not something I would hold against him. The reaction to the pressure is what I would say is, that's one of the first times this preseason. I think this is how I phrase it after the game. It's one of the first times this preseason that I was conscious of the fact that I was like, I'm watching a rookie right now. I'm watching a guy who's learning at the NFL level. And that's not a bad thing. That's what you have to do. Right. And so like that's why when I say, hey, if they're even, I'm probably going to go with Jake this season as the backup, because I just think he handles the pressure situations a little more comfortably. And I also am keenly aware of the fact that I don't want to put Spencer in a situation that's going to just destroy his confidence. I want him to develop. Like me saying, I think Jake is the better option as a backup this year is not me saying that I don't think Spencer has any long-term ability. It's not what I'm saying at all. I just think that when you watch those guys play, you have to pick one of them. And I'm probably going to go with the veteran option if we see what we saw last week. That said, I don't know if either of them necessarily stepped into a situation where they would be my first choice as a backup quarterback, right? If you had a veteran option, I might go with that door number 3. Because Jake didn't have a great game either. He had a pass that should have been intercepted. I don't know who he was throwing to. I haven't gotten to that point in the tape yet in the L22. I've only gotten through the first half. He had a play that he just
it, right.
I don't know if he skied he either threw it way behind A.T. Perry or way too high for Mason Fairchild. One of those two guys. And it should have been intercepted. Now, I would also say that he executed on that 2-minute drill at the end of the game. It wasn't really a 2-minute drill. It was more like a 7-minute drill. Like, he drove the ball down the field with the threes. Obviously, he didn't get into the end zone, but he gave yourself a chance. And so, I'm not going to say, hey, this is a great drive, but he did get them down to the 20-yard line area, gave yourself a chance for some shots into the end zone. Would have been nice if he had gotten it into the end zone. But I think if I'm trying to look at something that say like, hey, this was a positive from that game, that drive was maybe the only major positive. Spencer also led a scoring drive that was aided by a couple penalties. Now, I'm not saying that he didn't help force those penalties, but that's how you got into field goal range, that 52-yarder that Blake hit. Just stats wise, Jake 7 of 13, 76 yards, 71.3 QB rating. Spencer Rattler 4 of 8, 27 yards, 57.8 QB rating. So it is what it is. I think that's what I would look at this as a Saints fan, as a coach, as whatever. This is a learning opportunity for these guys, right? Like these are the reps that you watch, you go back, you figure out, well, what do I need to do better? And you go into the preseason finale and see if, hey, I can fix some of these mistakes. And I'm not saying I know what all the mistakes were. I'm just saying like that's what you need to do at this point for those young quarterbacks. And I don't think anyone has won the backup job. And I know this is a long rant. I don't think anyone has lost the backup job. But if you had to pick one today, I think it would be Jake.
I think that way too. And I'm curious how this team is going to handle the final preseason game. Will we see Derek Carr come out with the ones at all? Because nothing's still proven there. Not proven, but I feel like you still want to get those reps of being in the new offensive scheme, getting everybody a little more comfortable before that mini bye. Or are they kind of split it up, going, you get a half between Haener and Rattler?
Yeah, to me, I don't know what I need to see out of Derek beyond better timing with his pass catchers. Like that's going to be, I don't even know. Like, I'm not going to say Derek had a bad day because you went 7 of 9, you let a long drive downfield. That's what I needed to see. Like, you don't want to see, you do want to see perfection in the preseason, but you don't need to see perfection in the preseason, particularly in a new offense. My biggest concern for Derek, and this is something that I think has been an issue for him, is, we talk about yak, we talk about getting yards after catch. Well, part of that is on the receiver, right? To catch the ball, turn up field, and create yardage. Another part of that is the quarterback has to be putting the ball in an area where the receiver can catch it and run. And over these first 2 preseason games, I don't know if I've seen one ball put in that type of scenario where if you get it to his outside shoulder and he can catch it and turn up field, great. If you get it to his inside hip, he's getting caught and tackled, right? And there has been, I don't know, the third down in the first preseason game was an example of that. It was inside. The third down failed to Cedric Wilson in this game. The ball bounced off his face. Another example of that. Like, if that's outside and he can catch it and run, you're in a better scenario. There was a completion to Chris Olave in this game, the one that the 49ers challenged, which, guys, we don't need to be challenging a 4-yard gain in the first quarter of a preseason game
here.
And if you are going to challenge that, you better be 1,000,000,000% sure they lost it. Like, the only thing dumber than that in that game was the digital measurement, which took way too long. If it's not faster than having those guys run out with the chains, throw it in the dustbin because it is not worth our time. And it
kind of reminded me like the tennis, but it wasn't as definitely wasn't as quick as the tennis in and out of the ball.
It took like 5 minutes. It was so long just to be like, yeah. It's a 3rd and short, 4th and short, whatever. Anyway, like I would just throw it away. Take whatever budget you have for digital measurements and put it into finding a way to make it so if the ball crosses the goal line, we know exactly when it happens, so we can get those calls right. Because Jordan Mims was still had a touchdown stolen away from him. Like, that was a touchdown. Give me a break. Anyway, but yeah, so that's another example. Like, Chris caught it.
Quick though, with that technology, the first down, the virtual measurement, they couldn't do that with the ball for The Mims touchdown? I just don't understand.
No, because what they're doing with that virtual measurement is not necessarily overturning or it's just measuring where have they spotted it in the first place. So they spotted it short of the end zone. So all the virtual measurement would tell you is how far away it is that they spotted it. It's not going to look at that play and say, right? So it's really just replacing those situations where you spot the ball, the yellow line is unofficial, and they're having the chain gang run out and like stretch it out. And which I would argue the drama of that alone is worth keeping. Like, what is more exciting? I mean, well, I wouldn't say what is more exciting, but like one of the most dramatic moments throughout a football game is when it's like 4th and short and we're like, ooh, I don't know about that spot. And they run out and you're like, I think he's going to get it. And then it's like one chain link short.
Yeah.
Stamp it down. And you're like, oh, anyway, especially when you're the team benefiting from that and it's a 4th down stop. Like that's so like the drama of that is peak football, right? And we're taking it away and putting up this weird animation. No, I don't like that at all. Anyway. But no, so that it was I want to say it was a first down, maybe a second down throw to Olave on the sideline. It ended up being like a 4-yard gain. It was a nice catch by Olave. He did a good job to get his feet down, but you're not trying to, toe tap for a 4-yard gain. That's a play where you're trying to catch it and turn upfield. And there was room for that. It was just, I think he's kind of overcorrecting and like some of the throws have been inside hip, but it should be outside hip. That throw was too far outside. And so it negated the ability to get maybe 6-7 yards. And instead it was a 4-yard gain. So to me, that's kind of a timing thing. It's a placement thing. There was a play over the middle of the field that, again, I think the ball was a little behind when it should have been in front. Olave got hit, right? So there is an element of you're trying to protect your teammates maybe by throwing it a little further out so that they can catch it and not be led back into the defender. But there's also that level of, hey, if it's over the middle of the field and it's behind, you're asking the guy to get lit up. So I'm only bringing this up because I think ball placement has been an issue. And as we go forward, if that doesn't improve, then I will find it very concerning. I think at this point in the preseason, you're like, okay, let's dial it in. Let's get this timing figured out so that, when the season gets here, when you're in week 3, that shouldn't be happening. And if it is still happening, it's, some throws are going to be behind. You're not going to be perfect on every throw. But if it's every throw that's behind, which there are a lot of throws behind right now, that's something to watch.
Yeah, I know Carr was asked post-game about his timing.
Yeah, and I mean, like, you're going to look at it and you're going to say, hey, it's not perfect right now, but that's what the preseason is for. So, like, if it wasn't for that, I would say, to answer your question, no, Carr doesn't need to play in the 3rd game of the preseason.
Yeah.
But because of that specifically, I start to wonder. But here is that clip that you mentioned on Derek talking about that time.
I think it's good. Yeah, I think I tried my best. I was really stressing too, like throwing them on time. Not taking a second hitch or anything like that. I was really trying my best to throw those things on time because this is the time you don't want to mess up, but it's okay to mess up. When it's the preseason, and so I was trying to throw them on time, and we had one. He almost made the play, but that's a trust throw versus press, and to get that live rep, that's real football. And so I feel very confident, with where those guys are, and as our guys continue to get healthy and adding everybody into the mix, I feel confident with those guys for sure.
Yeah, I think the trust throw he's talking about would have been the one in the red zone. I'd have to go back and look, but he had a close connection to Olave in the red zone. He wasn't able to haul it in. But yeah, like when it comes to, okay, when is the ball coming out? I think that's actually been solid, right? It's when I say timing, I mean more of timing between the quarterback and receiver of like, okay, when exactly is he coming out of his break? Where do I need to put the ball so that when he gets out of the break, he's going to be here? Like, I guess you could call it placement. You could call it whatever.
Anticipation, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Anticipation would be a good word. Probably a better word for it than necessarily timing. And I'm not kind of understanding exactly where those guys are. But like, you can look across the line, Brock Purdy didn't look great either. Right. Like, I think this is a point in the preseason where guys might not be at their peak, and that's understandable. That Brock had one of the worst throws I've ever seen. It was like peak Brett Favre, what are you doing kind of throw. And I think it was Chase Young who was applying pressure, and he throws it clean across the middle of the field. Shamar John Charles should have intercepted it. The tight end played defense on that play. And it's just funny. Like, even the guys that everyone, I mean, we got people out here comparing Brock to Drew Brees. And, I don't think he had a great day. They were obviously down a lot of playmakers, but everyone's down playmakers in the preseason. So that's not an excuse. Saints were missing half their roster, it felt like. So anyway, that's just, it's just something that people are going to freak out about in terms of, the ball's left behind. And I do think there's some merit to it. Like, he needs to improve. It's not only just, hey, well, why wasn't this ball caught? It hit him in the face. It was like, well, it was completely in the wrong spot. So we'll see. Either way, like Chris has done a good job of saving throws, right? And so there's something to be said for that.
Yeah, we went through the Saints quarterbacks. You even mentioned Brock Purdy there, but please, nobody in the NFC South go out and pick up Josh Dobbs because he's a Saints destroyer of everything.
Yeah, that was I think I called it the Dobbs fence in my article.
Holy crap!
If Josh Dobbs only played the Saints 17 games a year, he would be a Hall of Famer.
And here he comes, right?
And to be fair, like, they've struggled, historically, at least in recent history, against the more mobile guys. But with him, it's another level. What I will say for that is he wasn't doing that against the first teamers for the most part. Like it was Isaiah Foskey and Peyton Turner, two guys that I would say have had tough preseasons.
I was going to talk about the down segment you're in right here. Those are two names too that go in the mix for sure.
Yeah, Peyton. I heard Bobby after the game, and I agree with him. What I will say for Peyton is he won multiple times on his reps.
Yeah, just didn't finish.
Didn't get to the quarterback. So like there's levels. I don't think the only time I saw Foskey really get close to making a play was when he just inexplicably was unblocked and ran straight at the quarterback. I think it was the third string guy by that point. And
Mordecai.
Yeah, Tanner Mordecai, right? Wisconsin. He's the guy who LSU played in the bowl game, I think.
Yes.
Or maybe. I think he was Wisconsin. Maybe he didn't play in the bowl. I don't remember. It's neither here nor there. But like that was he had him dead to rights. Like, no one blocked him. All he had to do was run at him, and he still couldn't get him. So I don't know. He's a guy that's going to have to figure something out. But it's one of those things that I don't know how to gauge it. When your defense, your first team defense looks really strong, forces 3 consecutive 3-and-outs, right? And then your second team, third team defense comes on and starts to struggle against a veteran, someone who should be, it's not like you're talking about a rookie who's learning. This is a guy who's been around, so he understands how to play. If he was in the UFL, which, when you're going against the third string preseason guys, you're basically playing a UFL roster, or at least in large part. Like, I think he would have success. So I don't know. We'll have to figure that out. I do think when you look at it and you say, well, this team has struggled against mobile quarterbacks, what's going to be different this year? I look at, Willie Gay, Chase Young, two very good athletes who should, in theory, have a much easier time tracking guys down and hemming them in than what you've seen in the past, right? So that's what my answer would be, is like, when those guys have been on the field in those situations, I haven't seen quarterbacks run and make a big impact. And so we'll have to see how that goes. But yeah, stopping Josh Dobbs. I think it was Jono Barnes who tweeted, like, the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Number 1, Pat Mahomes. Number 2, Josh Dobbs against the Saints.
I was like, I can't believe he's doing, the Pastronaut at it again.
Yeah, I do think there's something to that, and I think Bobby would agree. I've asked him about this. Like, sometimes you just feel real good against a certain team. It doesn't even have to make sense. It's just like you're in a zone, you're in the rhythm. Like, and I think that's true at certain stadiums. Like, some guys play really well in certain places. Some guys play really well against certain teams.
For some reason, Josh Dobbs just eats up Dennis Allen's defense.
I don't know. Maybe it just makes sense to him. He's a smart guy.
Yeah.
The last thing I'll mention, other than, injuries, like Kool-Aid McKinstry went out with a knee injury. Yeah. I learned that Dennis Allen and the rest of the coaching staff calls him JaQuincy, which, okay, I guess he hasn't earned a nickname yet. I don't know how that works, but
I guess it's like, we're not calling you Kool-Aid. We're calling you, JaQuincy, for crying out loud.
That's basically what happened. And it's just, when he said that in the press conference, I was like,
everyone was like, who? Oh yeah.
Yeah. We lost JaQuincy early on. Like,
who's that? Right.
Yeah. But yeah, so the injuries, he had a knee issue. Apparently it's nothing major, but I wouldn't be surprised if he keeps him out for a little while. Sincere Haynesworth went down with a knee injury that looked rather significant. I saw him kind of I saw him and Dallin Holker, who had an ankle injury, kind of in riding off on a cart after the game. Which,
and
that's
pregame for Holker, and that was a big disappointment.
Pregame. Like, it wasn't even like pregame warmups. It was like he's just catching passes from the quarterback, and and he sprained his ankle somehow. I don't know. But yeah, so that's a negative. But the biggest negative for me was the punting game.
Oh,
and that includes returns.
What happened,
right?
Sweet Lou?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think Matt had a good day. I don't think Lou had a good day. Cedric Wilson definitely didn't have a good day. Usually when you ask Dennis Allen after the game, what do you think about this? He'll be like, I got to go back and watch the tape. When I asked him about Cedric, he was just like, yeah, he should have fielded like 3 of those. And I agree. Punters are too good. You can't just allow the ball to bounce if you're there. And he was there at least 2 of the kicks that he let bounce. It was just like I think they were at the 5 and the 6. Presley Harvin was having himself a day. They all checked up.
Yeah.
He got, whatever. I don't know what club he was using, but it was the right club. Because every single one, perfect. Just didn't even bounce back. Like, a lot of times you'll see a really good kick and you kind of over check it, right, and it kind of kicks back and you lose a couple yards. No, his just hit the ground, bounced straight up, and went back down. It was remarkable. So, I tracked all of them, because tracking net can be difficult because you kind of have to do it yourself.
Yeah.
So Lou's 3 kicks. The first one was from the 25. He kicked it to the 38, no return, 37-yard net. Second one was from the 44, the New Orleans 44. He kicked it to the San Francisco 20, no return, 36-yard net. Lou's kicks are actually really easy to track from a net perspective, because when they don't return them, however long the kick was, that's how long the net was. And to his credit, none of his kicks got returned. So, I mean, that's better than allowing long returns. His final kick was the worst by far, and it was from the 43, the San Francisco 43, to the end zone for a touchback. If you're not going to be a guy that flips the field, you have to take advantage of those situations. You cannot, at a certain point, you're better off going for it on 4th down rather than taking a 23-yard net gain, which is what that was. So that was a really bad day for him. Hopefully he can bounce back, but definitely not a positive one. Matt didn't have a great day either. We talk about he has a booming leg. He kicked it from the 9 to the 45, the San Francisco 45. It was returned 13 yards for a 33-yard net. Even by his standards, that was a 46-yard kick backed up, where all you're worried about is distance, and he didn't get it. His next kick was better. It was from the New Orleans 15 to the San Francisco 35 with a 6-yard return, so it's a 44-yard net. For perspective, Presley Harvin, which when I keep seeing his name on the score sheet, I think Percy Harvin, but Presley Harvin.
Same thing to me. I'm like, wait a minute, he's now a punter?
Yeah. The third. He kicked it from the San Francisco 49 to the New Orleans 9 with an 8-yard return. So he actually kicked it to the 1. No, that's not true. He kicked it to the 9. It was returned 8 yards. The Saints got it at the 17, 42-yard net kick. That was his worst kick of the day in terms of result. His next one from San Francisco 38 to the New Orleans 6, no return, 56-yard net kick, inside the 10. That's, A+, right? His next one was from the New Orleans 40 to the 5. So, that's the max you can get is 40 if he kicks it right down to the goal line, actually 39.5. Instead, you're talking about, 35-yard net, get the ball at the 5-yard line. You're good to go. Someone's trying to call me, so if my mic screws up, let me. Then the next one from the San Francisco 46, New Orleans 8, no return, 46-yard net. It's never a good day when you walk away thinking the Saints' best option at punter might be to go put a claim in on the 49ers backup punter when he inevitably hits waivers.
Oof.
Right? Because that's what I walked away thinking. I don't know. The best punter on the field was the 49ers backup today. So we'll have to see how that goes. I don't think either of those guys has been as bad as they looked in this game, but definitely not a positive.
No, with Lou, it's definitely a little concerning just because of the inconsistency. That's the biggest part. We know sometimes it looks great, and then other times you're left scratching your head going, where's that consistency just hasn't been there from him. And you would hope that, year 2, it'd be a little different, but it just seems to be a looming problem where you're not getting a shank as often. But there's just still a huge question there. And I don't know if that would be the case, if that's going to be one of those, after preseason, the Saints are going to be searching waiver wire for a punter. That'd be kind of disturbing too.
Yeah, I wouldn't say he shanked any of these kicks. I think you'd like a little bit more, a little bit better directionality out of them. And I think that's, if they're going to bounce, you want them to, you don't want to necessarily kick the punt out of bounds. You want to pin it on the sideline. You have to maximize that yardage that you're going to get. You don't want to waste the yardage out of bounds. Like, if you're going to kick it out of bounds, you want it to be like just out of bounds. Like, you don't want it to be 10 yards out of bounds, because then you're sacrificing the forward yards, right? I will say I thought he had a really good day against the Cardinals. So it's not like he's been bad all camp. I think you've seen solid days from him. Just wasn't his best day. So that's where I'd leave it. The backup offensive line, I thought, was an issue as well. Landon Young obviously didn't have a great day, but he's the backup, right? So if you're going at it with Taliesin Fuanga, I feel better about it. That said, like, Shane Lemieux, I do not want to see him snapping the ball ever again. Like, whether it's Lucas Patrick or even Caesar, I don't think that Shane should be your backup center. That said, like, he could be your backup right guard. And we'll see. But, that's when we talked about the quarterbacks, having what I would call a rough day, the protection was an issue all second half, all second quarter, with those guys in there. So it's just something to watch.
Yeah, definitely. We'll see how it shakes out more going forward, this third preseason game. And yeah, I just want to know, and I don't know if DA is going to give us any kind of game plan for them, because he's been very, very tight to the vest with his plans for playing time for guys. But there's obviously still a lot of players that do need some work. But like you're mentioning, that was the backup offensive line. So those guys are going to get plenty of run there.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to get anything out of them in terms of a game plan. I don't think they're going to decide it until late in the week. So I'll figure it out. But
I'm going to tell my players before I let you know.
Yeah. And I'm not going to tell them until the morning of the game. But hey, we'll figure it out. All right, that was a long segment. Let's wrap it up. We're going to come back, talk about some of the things that went well in the Saints-49ers game. And I think there was a lot of stuff that actually did go well. Like, we've been very negative so far, but I actually came out of that game, a game the Saints lost, feeling better than I did coming out of the opener, a game the Saints won. So
a notable name missing from that first segment.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about things that improved, stock up, not necessarily the best of the best here. So keep that in mind. But all right, this is Inside Black and Gold. We will be right back. And we're back on Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak. He is Steve Geller. We have some good comments, questions in the feed already, but we should have time for several more. If people want to throw some comments in there, we'll get to as many as we can. In the final segment, it'll be a bit of a mailbag, and we'll dive into it. But we are officially onto the positivity. We spent 30 minutes being negative. We don't need to be negative anymore, right? And this was a game that, I think we saw the things that we needed to see from the first team offense. I think we did just even the first team defense, and they kind of doubled down on that. They were very good. Chase Young, that NASCAR package with Cam Jordan inside, continues to impress. Cam Jordan, going through the tape, one thing that always stands out to me about Cam Jordan, I don't care how old he is, I don't care what injuries he's dealing with, you are always going to get elite top end effort out of him. And like, people say, oh, whatever, he's supposed to do that. Yeah, everyone's supposed to do that. That doesn't mean they do, right? Like, what separates a lot of like high-end players from, a lot of other players is you're getting that motor, and everyone wants to say they have a high motor, but not everyone goes out there and gives 100% effort on a play where you're probably thinking, it's not coming to me, right? But you still want to run it out, because what if he cuts back? And that's what happened on the first play of the game. Cam is lined up at the left end. There's a kind of toss outside. It's a wide zone run. And I thought he would have kept going to the edge of the field. Instead, he cuts back, and Cam did his job, kept his eye on the play, comes across, cleans it up. You don't have to worry about a safety coming up and getting run over because Cam cleaned it up. So I just want to give him credit. Like we talk about with defensive ends is the pass rush and getting pressure on a quarterback. And yes, that is massively important in today's NFL. But that's only half the game, right? Like you also have to play the run. And I know that's something that's annoyed Cam over the years because that's something that he's always put a heavy emphasis on. And he's still really good at it. Like that's people say, oh, why does he keep getting these reps? Because when you talk about a defensive end, when you talk about a run stopping defensive end, he's the best on the Saints roster still in that part of the game.
Yeah, I mean, with Cam, it's hard not to be biased with him. I know folks are ready to claiming he's ready to get into coaching, but he's a guy you root for because of obviously his personality, what he's been able to do in the past. And like you mentioned, there's that no quit in him for sure. This dude is all about ball and gives it 110% every single time. I always find it funny when folks say that because how do you do that? I don't know, but I would put Cam in that category if I had to.
Yeah, it's a nonsense term. Like that's 110% is the same as 100%.
But like basically you hear all the time too, practice like you play. And obviously preseason is like practice, but he's going out there like it is a regular season game.
Yeah, and I mean, I do think that you're not going to have Cam on the field in obvious passing situations, and that's a big change.
Yeah.
Right? Well, actually, I take that back. You're not going to have Cam on the field as a defensive end in obvious passing situations. You will have him at defensive tackle next to Brian Brzee. We saw that again this week. And, there was one I haven't tweeted it yet. I'm going to tweet it eventually. I don't want to, I don't like to tweet stuff before I'm like 100% sure I know what I'm looking at. Sometimes I have to double check with some people. But there was one set
checking. Wow. Just
crazy, right? Weird to say, not just say stuff. But no, there was one set where, so you had the NASCAR package, but it was so wide. You had Carl's out, wide, call it wide 9, whatever you want to call it, out wide on one side. You had Chase out wide on the other side. You had Brian kind of lined up at the nose, and that meant Cam was basically lined up over the left tackle. So he's still kind of rushing from his traditional spot there. And I don't know, I kind of found that interesting because he came in and he ran a stunt, and he almost, it was funny because Brian, he worked off of his guy, and Cam kind of came in like a snowplow and he basically tackled the guy. And I don't know if that was what they planned ahead, but it worked. Like, because all of a sudden Brian has no one blocking him, and he kind of loops around. I wouldn't say he necessarily affected the throw, but he was there. Right. So I just thought it was interesting. There's going to be a lot of really fun things you can do with that pass rush group. And I'm excited to see it. I think that's when you look at, okay, why can this team be great? It's because when you can pressure the quarterback, you can win games. Like the Giants have been terrible so many times over so many years. You know where the NASCAR package came from? You know who brought that into the NFL? It was Steve Spagnuolo with the Giants, right? It was like the OCU Manura. It might have been before that. It was like the Michael Strahan team.
Justin Tuck.
And then you got into 2012, it was really that team. It was like OCU Manura, Justin Tuck, Matthias Kiwanuka kind of going inside. And then, everyone remembers Steve Spagnuolo coming here and being terrible. But like every team has a NASCAR package the way they have it now because of those teams. And those teams, that team won a Super Bowl in 2007 because they could pressure Tom Brady. Won a Super Bowl in 2012 because it could pressure Tom Brady. And Eli Manning, just blacked out and had the game of his life. So like, when you can affect the quarterback, you give yourself a chance every week. And
you mentioned the name Spagnuolo. It's baffling on how awful things were here, and a lot of it was personnel issues. But man, he's gone on to have glowing success with Kansas City.
Yeah, and he's also a guy I would look at when you say like some coordinators aren't cut out to be coaches. Hint, hint.
Yeah,
he's one of them, right? He was I think it was Baltimore that he was the head coach. He was terrible. But he went to Kansas City and he's found a new home, and he's still that guy. All right. Yeah. So that's that wasn't even what I initially planned to talk about, but the defense has just been so much fun to watch. You have these corners like Rico Payton is like the most targeted player in the NFL over 2 weeks of the preseason. I think he's allowed like 2 catches. he had one that the only mistake I would say he made is if he turns his head and gets around. I think it was at the end of the first half. It's probably an interception. He just played it perfectly. Instead, he kind of settled for batting it away. And, he's a guy that I would say has gotten kind of picked on in camp a little bit.
Okay.
But, that's the thing. You learn, you get better, you improve. He's coming out of Pittsburgh State. He's a D2 guy. It's like things were probably going 1,000 miles an hour for him over the first couple weeks of camp. He got out there. He's gotten out there in games, and he's really showed out. So he's a guy that I've been impressed with. Anthony Orji is a guy that I've been impressed with. He's been really good in camp. He's an electric athlete, and you can kind of see it. And I thought he had a really solid game. I want to say he led the team in tackles. I'd have to double check that. Let's see. Did he? I make that up? No, he did. He had 8 combined tackles. He had 2 passes defense and a tackle for loss. He's just kind of been everywhere, so he's definitely on my list. Both of those guys for like the same reason. They just keep making plays. Anyone on the defense or anything that stood out to you before we go to the first team offense, which is kind of just a catch-all for that group?
Trying to think defensively. You definitely obviously mentioned Rico, Orji. I think Rajon Wright had a play or two that was decent too. Someone that, it was like, wait a minute, who exactly is that? You see the name Wright and you're kind of not so familiar. It doesn't jump to your forefront right away, but thought he had a pretty decent outing.
Number 28, getting out there. Yeah, no, I think the corners in general, we talk about Dennis Allen and coaching up defense, and especially the defensive backs. They always seem to have a stable of defensive backs, right? And that's something that we take for granted now. And 6, 7 years ago, maybe no. Well, actually, we're so far beyond that now. Maybe like 8, 9 years ago, how much we would have killed for like a guy like Ike Yadam to show up, right? Like even a guy like Rico Payton who's just starring in the preseason. They're just like, oh, maybe we have a guy. No.
Another one Abear was actually raving about after the game. He feels that Alontae Taylor's growth in the slot has been immense.
Yeah, and he's confident. He's a confident guy, and I like when Alontae's out there with confidence. And I would say he got off to a slow start at camp a little bit, but he's really, really come on strong, and I really like how he's approached things and his mindset. The last thing I'll mention, Brian Brzee looks like he has kind of supplanted Colin Saunders as the early downs defensive tackle, and it's tough because that's a rotation. You're going to see Colin on the field. That's why
I would say you'd hope from your first round pick, obviously.
Yeah, and I think people need to chill on like the Colin Saunders takes, right? Like, because he's going to be on the field. You're going to get him on the field, but now I think you're in a scenario where kind of like 1st and 10, where it could be a pass or run. So you have pass downs, you have run downs, and then you have kind of, I don't know, what do you want to call it? Neutral downs, either or. Like, I think those downs, like the 1st and 10s, will go to Brian Brzee now. And in the past, they would have gone to Colin because it's a high percentage of a run. Now I think you're more comfortable with Brian in terms of how he's playing the run, so you can actually put him on the field and know that if it is a pass, we're in really good shape. If it's a run, we feel like he can hold up. In rundowns, it's still going to be Colin Saunders, right? He's going to get on the field because that's what he is. He's a bowling ball. Like, he's this big, is this really just stocky, low to the ground. He's not going to get moved. But that's a good look for Brian. It kind of reinforces like, hey, in year 2, we've seen positive steps out of Brian, because it was tough to put him on the field in rundowns last year because he was getting moved, right? He's a tall guy. Got to get your pad level low. He struggled with that at times last year. And it's just a good indicator that, the coaching staff is pleased with what he has done.
And yeah, like I said, it was like a 1st round pick starting, looking like a 1st round pick is important because it's obviously, I know we're going to get to them eventually. Guys that have been those early selections haven't really panned out to their draft status.
Oh, we're getting to it. We're getting to it right now. We're going to talk about the first team offense.
Big time Trevor.
Trev in the offense in general. I got to catch up with him in the locker room after the game. There are a couple other voices on here. But this just kind of hear kind of how he felt like that game went for him. And let's do it.
Inside rush, I got the thing I can definitely improve on, but Overall, I think it was fine, but I can still improve a ton, and I need to improve a ton. So,
second game at right tackle, though, is that just kind of the progress you're looking for week to week to try to just keep building a little bit?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, just getting changed to the other side, and I've never played over there before since I started in April or whatever, and I played left my whole life pretty much. So. I just got to keep going in every day, improving, and eventually I'll get there.
You have to kind of set benchmarks for yourself because it's like you're not going to get everything in one day. You have to kind of work towards it. Is that something that you've spent any time thinking about? Like, okay, I want to be here at this point. I want to be here at this point.
Yeah, I mean, kind of. I would say I try to figure out, one thing to work on a day and improve on that, and then, gradually just seeing the progress you make by doing that. So. Yeah, just, trying to improve a little bit every day and just stack up the days and, yeah.
And have you seen that on film where, you're working on something and then you see it and like, okay, there it is. Is that something that you feel like has happened? Yeah,
there's definitely some of that happening. Repping it over and over and, doing stuff in individual O-line drills and then being able to carry that over to, our team or even the game reps. I've definitely seen that in a couple things, and that's how you improve. So I just got to keep doing that and keep going forward and getting better.
Just run game tonight, kind of like what you were anticipating it could look like with you guys.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in practice, I know we were definitely having some days where we were, getting our run game really, really solid. I think last week didn't really show what we believe we can do, and I think this week it was definitely improved, but I think we can even do even better.
Yeah. What do you think clicked this week? Instant reaction to the game. I
don't know. I think we were all focused. I mean, last week we were too, but I think we were just focused. We were ready to go. We were, going out there and looking to have fun and run the ball, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be like awesome as an offensive lineman. Like even like that long touchdown drive is like 10 running plays on the drive.
That's a great feeling for sure. Yeah. Being able to just run the ball and just keep doing it until they can they can't stop you. So you might as well keep doing it.
Is it important to get like just like that success like you had on that drive in the preseason before this doesn't matter?
Yeah, for sure. I would say it helps. Your confidence number one. It's seeing yourself. Do it in a preseason game and, kind of get back into that, kind of feeling of just being able to go out there on a long drive and being able to convert it. So I think it's great and it's good for, not just preseason, but, hopefully carrying that over to the regular season.
For you in particular, how helpful is it that when you establish the run and you get them thinking about the run in terms of pass setting, when they can't just put their ears back and come at you? How important is that for an offensive line?
It's a very good feeling for sure. You don't have them, knowing it's a pass. It's a lot harder to block them when they know it's a pass. So for them to be able to, kind of think like, oh shoot, is it a run? Is it a pass? That definitely is very helpful for all five of us up front, and when you can run the ball great, you're going to have a good offense. So,
on the long drive, did you kind of feel that because it seemed like that's what was happening from
Yeah, I definitely felt like that for sure. I think we were moving the ball really well, running the ball. So, what was it, like a 12-play drive or something? Was it more than that?
It was 95 yards,
Yeah, it was a way. Actually, I don't even know, but
3-4 downs.
Yeah, it was good for sure. Just being able to run the ball, it's an old lineman's dream for sure. So, hopefully we can, keep working on that, keep even improving at that, and I think we're gonna be good.
Yeah, so that was Trevor Penning talking about that. He didn't even, it's funny, like you come off the field and it's like, I know it's a 16-play drive because that's what we're tracking that. These guys just know it was like, we're on the field for a long time.
Yeah.
And again, like I asked about it, and the ability to run the ball in this offense is paramount. Like you have to be able to run the ball. And if I came away happy about anything, it was the run blocking for the most part was solid. And that's an area that Trevor should be able to be a much better player. than he was last year. And hopefully if you can do that, then you can build on it. I didn't track all of his reps with the second team as much. I tracked all of the reps with the first team. And, like the thing with Trevor, and this is what we talked about prior to coming on, is like, you don't, as an offensive lineman, we get caught up in grades and okay, that was a B block, that was a C block. I know his PFF grade for the game wasn't great, but I look at it more so like, okay, did you win or did you lose? And if you lost, did you lose to a degree in which it impacted the play, right? There was only a handful of reps in that game where I felt like, hey, he didn't win and his rusher actually affected the play. And there was one that he just lost straight up, just clean. And it was an inside move, and we've seen him struggle against inside moves. And Derek actually got the ball out for a completion. He got it out quick. I think it was Cedric Wilson. So even on that play, it didn't torpedo the result, but I think he had to get the ball out quick because of the pressure. I thought he had some nice combo blocks with Caesar, especially in the run game. The last two plays before the touchdown, which I think that third down play was a touchdown. You had him and Caesar double teaming and getting a strong push in the run game. And again, like we talked about, like I talked to Trevor about, it's when you can get them thinking about the run, it makes his life so much easier. It makes every offensive lineman's life so much easier. There was a couple plays that I would say he got beat, and you want to improve there. But if a 16 play drive, that's basically 2 drives, right? Like, and so the way I look at it is, okay, if you can get to a point where maybe one play every 2 drives, you'd be like, okay, he lost and it seriously impacted that play. I could live with that, right? If that's the rate at which you are having a rep that it's like, that sucks. But you can survive that. And I think that's the point. You're trying to step forward for Trevor. You are trying to get to a point where having him on the field is not making it impossible for you to play offense, right? Because that's the point where you bench a guy, where him being there is making it so you cannot operate. And I didn't feel like that was the case today. Even the first 2 drives, like I wouldn't pin it on Trevor. There was one tough rep in the first game, in the first drive. But that was also a drive that you look at it and you say, well, they started 1st and 15. Foster Moore had a false start. So I think that was a lot more impactful when you're backed up the way they were, and then you're behind the chains. But, like Trevor's not out of the woods by any stretch. Trevor has a long way to go. But for me going into this game, at least the way I looked at it is you had a really, really rocky preseason opener. I need you to show improvement. I need you to fix some of those mistakes and take steps forward. And he did that. Is he ready? Probably not. But I think that there was a scenario where you come out of this game and you're like, we need to go find somebody. We cannot continue this. And that's not how I felt. So by virtue of that alone, I will say stock at least somewhat up, right?
Yeah. You weren't like the first game. It was like, oh my God, the alarms are going off. Like you said, people are like, what's left on the waiver wire? There's got to be somebody out there, or we got to make a trade to bring someone in. Obviously, I don't think that's the answer. No one's on the street right now that can just come in and be your starting right tackle. This development of Trevor Penning, though, is a big concern. Obviously, moving the positions, we heard the fresh start, and not seeing that in that first preseason game was a bit alarming. And I agree with you. It was like, well, I got to see something in this preseason game number 2, or then, you got to start thinking about, if he's not the right tackle, who is, and then where else can you play Trevor in this line?
Yeah, and I mean, it's like you're not going out in the street and finding a starting caliber tackle either. So
it just doesn't exist.
Yeah, they're just not there. And so you kind of figure it out, and it's like, okay, you go make a trade, maybe swing a trade. But even that guy, like, again, you're not bringing in a Pro Bowler. Like you're bringing in a guy that might, like, you're hopeful that he can not be a massive issue. Now the thing for Trevor that I think is really important is, okay, can the Saints get quality left tackle play, right? Because when you're able to help Trevor, when you're able to chip on his side, things get way easier. But that only is true if you can run the ball to that side and not have the defensive line just feeling like, hey, we can take care of this. And then also feel like you don't need to help on the left side. And we'll see. Hopefully Taliesin Fuanga, hopefully that back issue doesn't keep him out for too long. We'll see this week if he can get back to practice. But like on the plays where you had a tight end over there, you didn't see pressure, right? Like you didn't see a huge issue. He was able to pass some blocks off. He and Foster, I thought, combined on blocks pretty well. And you'll go from there. But by and large, when you look at the day that Trevor had, I can't be mad about it. And hopefully for him that builds confidence, because that's when my biggest concern for Trevor going into that game was you just saw a kid who wasn't trusting anything. It's just, you could see it on his face that he was just waiting to get beat, right? And no one's gonna, you're not gonna have success if you go into a game feeling like you already lost. And so hopefully he can build off of that, right? And we'll go from there. But yeah, that's, the first team offense, when I look at the preseason, I look at it as like, hey, again, like I said in the first segment, I don't need everything to be perfect, but I do need to see a vision of like how this is going to work. And obviously when you get back, you start all three of your drives inside your own 10 or whatever. The first drive actually was inside the 20, but the second two drives were inside your 10. And if you can score on 50% of the drives inside your 10-yard line, that start inside your 10-yard line, you are probably the best in the NFL at that, right? Like like having to go 90 yards for a score is a low percentage scenario in the NFL. So, in terms of if we hadn't seen that, would I have been very, very concerned? Yes. I thought Jamal Williams had a solid day. I do have some concern about the running back position in general, just because it just seems like a slow position. Like even with Alvin, I don't see the elite athleticism that I probably want at the running back position. But that's another problem for another day.
Yeah, one thing I will say about Trevor Penning, obviously, too, the 49ers didn't have their first teamers out there, that defense. So you got to look at the competition. But we're just talking about, like you're saying, stock up in the game, and whoever he did have to go against, it was at least a hell of a lot better than Arizona's backups too. They weren't playing starters in game one either.
Yeah, and opposing defenses also aren't game planning to attack whatever weaknesses exist within Trevor's game, and that'll become more and more apparent when there's more tape on him. So yeah, no, like you are nowhere near out of the woods. Like I don't even know if you can see the traffic yet in terms of getting out of the woods. But in terms of expectations versus reality, and what you went into that game needing to see, and what you saw, I think you ended up in a better spot than you were going in. So
yeah, it's better than ending on the stock down segment.
Yeah, right. Again, like I went in that game thinking this might be Trevor's last game at right tackle. He's earned himself more time is the best way I can phrase that. And we'll go from there. A couple other notes, right? Blake Grupe, all you can do is go out there and make the kicks you're asked to kick. 52 yards in what I would consider to be a pretty strong wind. And he had room to spare. I thought that was a really big moment for him in terms of, hey, you got to go out there and win a job at some point.
And look plenty good. Definitely.
Yeah, it was a really nice kick. Yeah. It was a really nice kick. And, Charlie didn't get a chance to kick, which is frustrating. I feel bad in terms of like these are his only, you only get so many opportunities in the preseason to kick. And if he is going to be a guy that hangs around all season in that international spot and you come into it next year, these are the environments that I need to see more of him in. So I almost think you would benefit from making that decision now and saying, Blake, you are our kicker. And then saying, but we are going to give Charlie all the reps in the third game. Because I do think that's kind of probably where you're going to end up. But I do think you will gain a lot more from getting him those reps in terms of you're going to go into next offseason. And I think that's where you're going to have a really intense competition.
Yeah, you mentioned that international spot. So if the Saints put him on there, a team can't go and steal him away, right?
That's something that I do not know. I haven't been able to get a solid
be the only
answer.
Reason they're not trying to feature him. I don't know.
I don't think that's it. I genuinely don't. Now, Samson Nakua, I do think that might be what's going on because his lack of time, his lack of reps is inexplicable. So we'll see. But none of the young wide receivers I would say really stood out in this game. Kevin Austin had one nice play, but then I think he had a bit of a struggle. Bub Means had a really nice fourth down conversion with the first team offense.
Yeah.
And just in general, like trusting a rookie in 4th down scenario to go to him there and having him step up. That's a really, that's a big kind of mark in his ledger that you feel good about. Will Harris, I thought he was fine. He got the first team reps at strong safety. So just by virtue of that, I feel like, that kind of changes my perception of that situation. And we'll see if that continues next week. I thought Jonathan Abram also had a solid day, although he had a really odd tripping penalty on a kick. I think it was a kickoff. Jordan Howden, I would probably put 3rd based on his performance in this game. And he's not, I wouldn't say he was terrible, but you got to be able to tackle Josh Dobbs at the goal line on 4th down, man. Like that's a quarterback. You got to make that tackle. That was a really tough look for him, especially when I would say his best attribute is that I would call him kind of more of a downhill player, kind of a thumper in that safety group. So Will Harris now kind of jumps to the top of my ladder of like, oh, it looks like they're giving him a really strong look for that starting job.
Yeah, that's interesting because we've heard Dennis Allen talk about it. Still nobody taking the bull by the horns at that other safety spot. So, interesting to hear from you that, you're seeing the rise elsewhere when it's not going to be maybe Abram or Howden. It could be, your other option.
Yeah, I mean, that's just based on, hey, these are how the reps went.
Yeah.
Right. And when you're playing this guy with the first team defense, it's a sign that he's, in line for that job. So, again, that could change.
Harris is a guy that's been around the block, obviously.
Yeah, he's a solid player. The ceiling might not be particularly high, but you know what you're going to get out of him. And there's something to be said for that. But all right, let's wrap up this segment. We've obviously been on for a while, so we're going to come back to a quick mailbag and then close it out, go cover not joint practices, an open practice with
a
fans.
PM session, too.
It's exciting. We won't see anything, and I'll tell you why, because they're allowing people to record it, so they will not show anything, knowing that it's going to be recorded. But there will be a chance for people to get autographs, and that'll be fun. But
what's more vanilla than vanilla?
Yeah, it'll be vanilla. It'll be like a preseason game. But all right, let's hit the break. We'll be right back. And we're back on Inside Black and Gold. Mailbag edition. Mailbag. I feel like it's like an episode of Dora the Explorer, like Blue's Clues. Like, let's check the mail. Or, I don't even know the song. But I remember in Blue's Clues they have make a big hullabaloo about going out and opening the mailbox. But either way, first thing we can talk about is Mitchell Milano says, "Can we drag Kirk Benkert down the French Quarter?" Yeah, so I don't know. I don't want to give his platform any more attention than it, because that's what it is. It's rage baiting, right? Like it's trying to make people angry, but it's like his take is so disassociated from reality that it's like I almost wonder if he's doing it intentionally, because the whole basis of his take is he says he keeps having Saints fans in his mentions telling him they're going to win the Super Bowl, and it's like I can't. First of all, I mean, I do a podcast, right? Like I talk to you guys. I don't have anyone coming at me saying they're going to win 14 games to go to the Super Bowl, you know. But like I also don't have a problem with fans being, optimistic and like rooting for their team. And I think that's what he's complaining about is like that there are any fans who are excited to watch the Saints at all. He said they might win one game. Like, what are you talking about? Like, this is crazy. And his whole take is based around like he doesn't like Derek Carr. And fine. Like, you're not alone in that. Like, a lot of people don't like Derek Carr. Like, congratulations, you've found an issue. But like he also didn't in his entire like odd take, he didn't mention the defense once. Which is like, okay. Like, you're ignoring like the best attribute of this team and acting like everyone's crazy, thinking they're not gonna be the number one pick in the draft. Anyway, did you watch that? I'm just assuming you watched that clip.
Yeah, I saw it. Just a former ridiculous Falcons take, and of course, you can always throw back at him. Oh, 28-3, bro. What have you done?
Who are you talking about?
Burkhardt.
Ben Kurt.
Yeah.
Take?
What's that?
He had a Falcons take?
No, just a former Falcons quarterback.
Oh, he played for played is a strong word.
Yes, exactly.
But yeah, I didn't realize he was on. I thought he was a Packers guy, but either way, it's not a take that it's just like,
so he's got that dirty bird vibe still in him. That's why the whole negative take on the Saints.
I don't know. It's just an odd thing to like, it's like you're creating a scenario that doesn't exist, which is that like Saints fans are just blindly optimistic about this team. And it's like, I don't think that's true.
You clearly don't listen to sports talk because we have so much negative talk. It's like, please, it's the beginning of the year. This is the time to have hope.
I would argue that they're like people are being overly negative in a situation that I think you could be pleasantly surprised. Like, I have to, Jeff Duncan does his annual like, survey of the media for records. This is going to probably be the first year that I put out a losing record for him in a while. But that's mainly because, hey, usually I'm doing this for you fans out there, because I'm usually, when I'm optimistic, it goes the other way. And when I'm pessimistic, I'm wrong. Like, so I'm going to be wrong for your sake. Right. But anyway, let's move on. I don't need to talk about Kurt any more than he gets. KD, he says, agreed. Carr consistently threw behind or too low for any yak yards. And yeah, like that's the thing. Like, we can talk about yak all we want. Location of the ball is a factor. And that's what's prevented it to this point. Hopefully you can improve on that, right? Like, if we're still seeing that in week 3 at such a high rate, then and it's a different conversation. But here's one. Champ EN 33 says, who would be the 3 biggest surprise cuts if you have to guess? Now, I'm not going to say these 3 guys will get cut, but I will tell you the players that could get cut that would be surprising in terms of people are not going to expect it, right? So one, that's not even fair, because I think a lot of people at this point would resign themselves to the fact that it's very possible that Kendre Miller gets cut.
Right. I don't know. I don't think that's a surprise either. Folks are kind of lined up waiting for that to happen.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, you look at it and it's like, okay, he just hasn't been healthy. And what I think what is more likely to happen with Kendre is he starts the season on IR. And that would be more beneficial to him than cutting him if he's not ready to go anyway. Because I just think at this point in camp, I don't think you have time to show much. And so I don't know, like, and they changed the IR rules apparently. And this is kind of something that I learned about in the recent weeks, where you don't have to carry, I think you get 2, where you don't have to carry a player onto your active roster. You can designate them as IR on cut day, basically. So in a situation where in the past you might carry a guy and cut someone that you intend to bring back, like Dwayne Washington, if you remember, like, he got cut and everyone was like, guys, he's going to come back. And like the next day, before they even announced he was back, he was already he was in the locker room. Like, technically, I don't think he was even on the roster at that point, but like that does happen. Like, I always look at the fullback, right? Like, no one's coming in and scooping up your fullback. So like, you're just like, okay, sit tight. We just need to do this. This year, you actually have some wiggle room in terms of you could designate Kendre to IR and not have his season be over, which is the case when you go on IR in the preseason. So that to me is more likely than just cutting him, because you don't know where you're going to be after a month, right? Like, as much frustration as there might be with Kendre Miller right now, what if both Alvin and Jamal get hurt in week 2 and suddenly you're desperate for someone who knows the offense, right? So I don't think you would gain anything by, you might save $1 million against the cap, but so he's one. A.T. Perry would be another one. He had a really strong preseason opener. There's still some questions about, okay, why don't you show it in practice? Why don't we see more? You can't just be a gamer. Didn't think he had a particularly strong game, although I will note that he's been dealing with a sprained ankle, so I think he was playing through something, and that's significant.
But the ankle shouldn't affect your hands.
No. Yeah, and he had a drop or two that was disappointing. I think of one more.
I think at this point, Orgies would be a surprise cut, obviously.
Yeah, maybe DeMarco Jackson. Maybe he'd be a guy that you just feel like, hey, I'd rather keep the rookie. I'd rather keep a Jalen Ford around, even though he's been hurt, right? If it came down to like an extra linebacker, an extra defensive tackle, would you prefer to keep Christian Boyd? Because you're going to have to cut a draft pick or two, no question, when you get down to cut day. And his question is going to be, who is that? So he would probably be my third. And I think that would be somewhat of a surprise in the sense that he's on his rookie contract too. And I think he's looked pretty solid. But when you just look at the positional value of like where you need a guy, if it came down to Orgy or Jackson, I would keep Orgy right now.
Yeah.
And so that would be the third one. I don't think, you look at people are saying Foskey should get cut. You're not cutting Foskey.
What about like a Christian Boyd?
That's what I was just saying. Like, I think like when it came down to one of those two guys, right? Like,
yeah,
I think that's a good example of like, you will get down to situations like that where it's not like, okay, I'm just going to cut this guy. It's, we have to cut someone. So who's it going to be? How are we going to make that determination? And if I had to do it right now, it would be Boyd. Cause I think it'd be Jackson because I really like what I've seen from Christian, and having 3 defensive tackles makes me a little nervous. But yeah, and like, you're not cutting Foskey. Like, people are going to say Foskey. Foskey's not the answer to that question. He's not getting cut. You need more from him, but year 2, you're developing a guy, and you're.
I was going to say, not yet. It's still way too early to cut bait.
Yeah,
unless it was just completely, out of this world awful. And I know it hasn't been good, but yeah, I agree. You're not going to cut bait with him this early. Like you said, year 2.
Not going to benefit you. So that's probably where I would go with that, is those 3 guys. Anyone else you think?
No, that's as far as a surprise. Yeah, I can't. Nothing's jumping to me that I would think there.
I'll give you one more, and it's only if the scenario where Spencer Rattler is your backup quarterback. I could see a scenario where you cut Jake Haener. Only because you could put him on the practice squad if no one claims him and have him be that available. It's just a question of, hey, do you think you can get him to the practice squad first of all? Do you think he's shown too much and a team might come in and scoop him up? Or, would he not even take that deal? Right? Like, because he feels like he can find a better opportunity elsewhere. I don't know. But if you did go with Rattler as your backup and then you were like, hey, we don't necessarily need a third developmental quarterback because you've already supplanted that guy.
Yeah.
Then I could see him being a cut. Right now, I wouldn't have him as a cut. But we'll have to wait and see.
Maybe they go out and you get rid of Haener, you bring Jake Luton back.
Yeah, well, Nate Peterman signed with the Raiders?
I think that's right. But yeah. Luton's on the Panthers. I saw him playing in preseason.
I think it would more likely be like Nate Peterman gets cut by the Raiders and you bring him back because he knows the offense. Like Jake Luton, the benefit of coming back last year was he knew the offense. He doesn't know the offense anymore. So it wouldn't really, other than knowing how to get in and out of the building,
right?
And like where the showers are and stuff. Like, I don't think he really has much of an inside track anymore as the veteran that you bring back.
Yeah, these comments coming in are Foskey are brutal, and I get it. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, again, you're talking about a young player. He was a 2nd round pick, so you expect more. But I think in general, we're a little too hard on young players that are trying to find their way. Bully everybody. Like sometimes it's just, some guys just take longer. And we'll see. But that's what I'll go with there. Tony Dawson says Saints had a good start. The defense was the Achilles heel in the second half. Yeah, I mean, it's when I get to the second half of preseason games, I'm looking at individuals. I'm not looking at
Right.
I'm not looking at like, oh, this group was not successful as a group. Like they allowed a scoring drive. Because that's just fact is that's not a group that's ever going to play together after this preseason. Like even if they make the team, even if they're in a group of guys that you keep on the roster, you're never going to be throwing that defense on the field in the form that it was. So I always look at it as like, okay, Rico Payton, he's out there, he's getting targeted. How is he holding up? How is his technique? Does he look like he's overwhelmed? Right. The pass rush, like, okay, who's winning? Who's beating the guy that they're lined up against? So yeah, I again, like the result of these games, they didn't even try to win. Like at the end of the game, I kind of want to send DA a thank you note for not calling timeouts at the end of the game when he could have. And I know Sean Fazend, the guy from Fox, was telling me that on the broadcast, like the 49ers folks were kind of like, I can't believe he's not calling timeouts here. And I'd be like, I can, because he, just like myself, is like, we've been here for 28 goddamn days. I'm ready to go home. Like we just had we don't need another 2-minute drill. We've had enough of them. Let's just call it and move on. and I like, again, it's like, it's about reps. It's about individuals in those second, third team groups.
Yeah, definitely was appreciated as well. Wrap it up, B, on that game for sure.
Yeah, we're done. I have had enough. Mitchell Milano says, every time I see Josh Dobbs suit up against the Saints, I feel like I'm getting ready to watch Prime Vic. I kind of wanted them to leave him in the entire game just to see exactly what he could have done. He was, yeah.
Like I said, just don't hope that any NFC South team ends up getting a hold of him.
Yeah, right. Every team the Saints play should trade for Josh Dobbs the week prior to that game. He doesn't even have to like learn the offense. He just has to show up. Brent Bannister said, they said A.T. Perry was seeing ghosts. So essentially we have 2 number 2 wide receivers, and I disagree with that. Second part of that sentence. I think you have a number 1 in Olave. Like I don't get this take that he's not a number 1 receiver. He is very much a number 1 receiver. We'll see with Rashid. Hopefully his toe injury is nothing significant. It's a bummer that we haven't seen him in either of these preseason games, because I would have liked to see just that combination in it's working together. But yeah, I think that the wide receiver depth is a concern, and that's why, when you see Bub Means making a play, I feel good about that. I know we had one person here saying they also were a fan of the play by Bub on 4th down. He had another catch, I believe, in the game. So I don't know. Maybe he can start to make an impact. Mason Tipton's a guy who, if he comes back and you feel like, hey, he can make an impact on this offense, that's another guy. But
he's dealing with a hamstring.
Yeah,
Okay.
And the soft tissue injuries are frustrating.
Right.
Just in terms of like, there's so many of them now. I think they've been fortunate in that we haven't seen, like Kool-Aid yesterday or Kool-Aid on Sunday. You go down with a knee injury, and it was actually on a play that I thought he made a really nice read on it. Like he was kind of carrying up. They're playing zone. I don't know if they were in cover 2 or cover 3, but they're in zone, and he was kind of working up. Actually, I think it was quarters, though I wasn't either of those. Either way, he's working up the sideline, like carrying the receiver deep. Reads the throw from Purdy, kind of breaks on the ball, and if it wasn't for the defender or the receiver kind of rolling up on his back leg, I think he has a chance to make an interception there. Instead, the guy kind of fell on him, and that's where he injured his knee. It was I want to say it was the final play of the first 49ers drive where he went out, and definitely was in discomfort. He had to kind of jog back across the field, went into the tent, came out, tried to ride the bike for a minute, tested it out, didn't really work, went back in the tent, then went back to the locker room, didn't come back out. So hopefully that's not something that keeps him out for a long time. But the Saints have actually avoided that type of injury, that type of oh, we got to get an MRI tomorrow, right? Like it's mainly been tweaks and pulls. And so that said,
been a big pull on Kendra Miller, that's for sure.
In Saldiveri, the entire, the entire rookie class has been hurt at one point. It's tough. It's tough. Michael Morgan asks, has the backup punter played this preseason? Yeah, he had 2 punts in that game. I don't think he had any in the first game. I think it was all Headley in the first game, but I could be wrong. No, he did. He had one. He had a couple. He hit one in the end zone. Remember that?
Right. Yeah, we did.
And he had the 61-yarder. So we've seen a good bit from Matt Hayball, actually. All right, I'm going to go through these new comments in real time.
I did see someone commenting on the Kool-Aid news. Jordan Schultz put out on Twitter that Kool-Aid avoided a significant knee injury, and the team believes he's got a good chance to play week 1 versus the Panthers. He played just 5 snaps before leaving the game this past week with an injury. So apparently, like Dennis Allen said after the game, they don't believe it's anything serious. And yeah, week 1, it seems like he should be good to go against Carolina, but still wait and see.
Yeah, and Jawan Johnson also sounds like he's going to be back soon, so that'll
Hallelujah.
I think that'll be a big addition for this offense. If he plays up to the potential that we feel like he has, right? No one at the tight end position. Like if I had to pick like a preseason standout at every position, right? Like if I had to go down the line and pick the best player I've seen so far in a preseason game, it would be Mason Fairchild at tight end, because we just haven't seen much of anything from the other guys, right? Dallin had a chance in this game to forward that cause, and he, I'm not going to blame him for spraining his ankle, but it was definitely an unfortunate result. And we'll go from there. But yeah, that was a tough one. And then people are talking about Kool-Aid. I think that's basically it. Brent Bannister says, speak on Peyton Turner because he can walk out the door hand in hand with Foskey. I disagree with that. I don't think he's had a terrible camp. Again, like if you go back and you watch the tape on Peyton, I saw him beat his guy a couple times and
just didn't finish.
There was one that he got to Josh Dobbs and Josh kind of rolled out and he's got superpowers when he plays the Saints. But like I actually think Peyton, again, for Peyton, I need to see him on the field. And so far, we've seen him on the field, and that's good. He also has, I think, what Peyton has going for him in this defense too is he has versatility as an inside-outside guy. So if you get later into the season and maybe you're dealing with injuries, there's a lot more versatility with Peyton in terms of what he can do. Like the frustration with Peyton again is he's got to stay healthy. He's got to stay on the field. To this point, he's only missed one practice. He had a toe issue. I think he's playing through that, guys. Like I think that's something that he's dealing with. I saw him kind of getting worked on late in the game. He had a shoe off on the table, but they didn't put the tent up. So clearly it was more just like a tape job than anything else.
Right.
But I think for him, I just want to see him. I just want to see him out there. And then we can have an evaluation on that once we see that. But when he's played, he's made an impact, right? And yeah.
When you're talking between Foskey and Turner, definitely Turner showed up a lot more, obviously.
Right, and he's in the final year of his deal anyway, so it's like you're just kind of seeing whatever you can get. Okay, one more thing, and we're going to hit this. Tony Dawson says, whenever Taysom Hill lines up in the backfield, even Stevie Wonder knows that Taysom is going to run the ball. Now, in that game, yes, because you didn't have much else at running back to deal with. That said, I do really like what they're doing with Taysom out of the backfield. And you can say they know exactly what he's going to do. Well, why didn't they stop it then? Right? Like the first play of the game, I want to say, or the first drive, I think he had an 8-yard run. He pounded it in from the 1-yard line. Like I don't have anyone I have more faith in on this team.
I think he had one play that was negative yardage. That was it.
Yeah, he had one play they blew it up in the backfield. And I think that's a good example of they probably kind of telegraphed that a little bit. That said, you don't run Taysom Hill like that very often in the offense, right? And so I like the idea of doing that maybe 1 or 2 times a game because it becomes a tendency breaker. Because in most cases, when you're lining up at quarterback, you know what he's going to do. When you line him up next to the quarterback, I think that you don't expect him to run the ball. You don't expect a straight hand up to Taysom Hill, and you can do a lot of other things. So I actually liked what I saw on those few reps that we got him as a kind of a running back. And I like the fact that they're being creative in how they're using him, and it's not just this kind of, like you said, standard. Hey, let him line up back there against 11 guys and see if he can beat all of them. So we'll see, but. Now, I don't agree with the fact that it's too predictable. I think they've been more unpredictable this in terms of what we've seen, and we just are seeing a very vanilla version of that offense right now. I think that when you see how this kind of coalesces into a more kind of built out scheme, his role will be fundamentally positive for this offense.
I've actually been proud of Saints fans because of the lack of offensive output in these, preseason games. I've not heard once, thankfully, anyone saying, well, we should just get Pete Carmichael back.
Ben Kurt probably thinks that there's people saying that. That's
he's a delusional, like you said, you want to say former quarterback. That's debatable as well.
No, he's definitely a former quarterback. You said NFL player.
Yeah, there you go. Right.
And I'm not going to sit here and question the abilities of anyone who made it to the NFL in the first place, because they are so far above me as an athlete to any level that I can even criticize that. But I'm pretty sure like his main point of analysis is through Madden. So take that for what it is. Because I believe he's the Madden guy. Now, there was a breakdown of Spencer Rattler that I haven't got a chance to watch yet. From what's his name? The quarterback who he was here. Remember last year he broke down Derek Carr, and it became a thing for a couple weeks.
Was it Orlovsky?
No, it wasn't Orlovsky. It was the other guy. His name escapes me. It does like the quarterback school thing. So I need to go watch that, and I'm curious because he broke down the first game, the game against the Cardinals.
Not Chase Daniel, huh? He went out. You there?
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
So my Wi-Fi just kicked, it seems. I've switched over to my emergency phone. So my phone is now my Wi-Fi. JT O'Sullivan, thank you. That's the guy. JT O'Sullivan is the quarterback school guy. Thank you for that. I do feel bad because I just don't have the bandwidth to search for it. Brenton Bannister says, I froze because I saw the highlights of Bo Nix. Maybe that's what happened. But I think more so that is just the universe telling me that we have done a 90-minute podcast and it is time to shut up. And that's what we will do, because this is going to be the end of this episode of Inside Black and Gold. I'd like to thank everyone.
Off the Tulane we go.
Off the Tulane we go. I got to go find a printer because apparently I need to print out my parking pass. And it's not 2006, and I do not own a printer. Apparently, I can just go to Office Depot with like a flash drive and they'll print it out for me. That's what I'm going to do.
Right, exactly. Or just you could stop at the studio.
No. I'm not going downtown unless I absolutely have to.
It's kind of on the way to Tulane, well, at least for me.
Not for me. But that's going to be it. Thanks, everyone, for hanging out. I apologize that we did this kind of off schedule. Going forward, next week we can be on. We should be back on kind of our standard schedule. These games next Monday we'll have breakdown probably.
You're getting fuzzier and fuzzier.
But yeah, I know. I can imagine. But all right, thanks everyone for listening. Who dat? Go Saints. Hope I see you all out there, Tulane. Peace.
Talk to you soon, Saints fans.